Good evening, everyone. This is Michael, and I'm substituting this evening for Tuija. And our meditation is the attracting money or financial resources or time for hierarchical purposes. It's really a vital issue when you see how money is spent, and largely for material values and for personal ends, somehow to make the physical body more comfortable and the desire nature more satisfied and the mind more interested and so forth, all in the lower 18 subplanes, which constitute the dense physical body of our planetary logos, and is therefore not really a principle in the occult sense. So we have to turn all that around if we can. And during the Aquarian Age, ruled by Uranus largely, and Uranus having to do particularly with money, law is Saturn, Venus is sex, and Uranus is money in the triplicity of Libra. Maybe we can do that. Well, we have to do that. Actually, DK says an interesting thing here. I'm able again to, at least for the time, to show you the text from which I am reading. And we've done this before. It was a while ago. And basically what I'd like to do is do it again, because it's so important. And as DK says here, if we can't solve this, if these problems remain unsolved, the human race will come to an end. Now, he's writing after the war, the Second World War, which was a kind of Armageddon, and things would look positive in general, but he was very watchful about where we could go if we were not careful. So he talked about Christ's saying in the Bible that the man who swept his house clean of, was it one devil or several, he found himself through neglect with many more devils that came to infest his household. So this is a little bit of a repeat, but these are questions which we have to take to heart and we must solve. Now, this was written 70 years ago, okay? But I think you will see that they still apply. So he's been talking about capital and labor, and these two still exist. Capital being directed mainly by the moonchain types with their advanced intelligence and their greater experience in incarnation, and labor having to do with those that have been individualized on the earth chain. Is the capitalistic system to remain in power? Is it entirely evil? Are not capitalists human beings also? And we do find some very generous people, They're overflowing with the results of their labors, and as a result, they give. They give because they see what to education and health and so forth, to better the lot of humanity. They are the philanthropists, and largely they are a combination of the third ray, of course, but the second ray as well. Number 2, will labor itself through its unions and its growing power vested in its leaders become a tyranny? Well, there was a danger of that, and now it's swung maybe too far in the other direction, where the moneyed interests have again gained greatly in power and are trying to quash the good that the unions have done. As DK says, noble work. Number 3, can labor and capital form a working agreement? Excuse me, or amalgamation? Or do we face another type of war between these two groups? Well, maybe that war is always going on, and there have been some progressive companies in which the labor are also the stockholders. So the opportunity to buy into the company and so forth is there, and then in a way they're not just working for someone else, they're working for themselves as well. It's probably, in human terms, a very good motivation. This is not general, but it is it is found in increased numbers of companies that are doing this. Number 4, in what way can the law of supply and demand be implemented so that there is justice for all and plenty for all? This is a big question, and it applies, I think, very much to try to get rid of that. Aquarius is the sign of distribution, and hopefully of right distribution, and of the sign of the divine circulatory flow. So, okay, if the every part of humanity is to receive its flow of the energy and to be supported by the necessary energy, not only just to survive, but to have a life of growth, then these Aquarian archetypes have to be put into effect, and they will be. I think the lack of flow will be pointed out very much during the first 720 years, when we will see, that's the Saturn decade, and where we will see all the privation that occurs through the hoarding of that which through which man must live, and also the dearth, the absence, the deprivation of those very things. I think many people just don't think that way, and as long as they are safe and have enough and even more than enough, they don't think about the people who have practically nothing. Number 5, must some form of totalitarian control be adopted by the various world governments in order to meet the requirements of supply and demand? And must we legislate for material ends and comfort? Well, DK said, it's not necessarily, looking back in the Stalin days, of Russia, it wasn't that communism itself was a total evil, but any totalitarian form of control is evil. And yet some central authority may be needed here. The fascism of Italy and of Germany during the Second World War, that was totalitarian as well. There are religions that have totalitarian tendencies, and it just doesn't allow for variety, and it doesn't allow for the the will, that little bit of will that each one of us has to be expressed, because if each one of us expresses what's in us in terms of our name, you might say, occultly considered, then the divine will express. So we hope to avoid totalitarianism, but it's not necessarily decided. Okay. What's number 6? What standard of living will, in the New Age, seem essential to man? Now, DK said we can live on a lot less materially than we imagine, and it takes much less materially to make the human being happy and satisfied and productive and growthful than that human being suspects. So there, may be the privation during this period of Saturn of what we have usually had in the material sense, but we will learn that maybe we don't need it. Shall we have, he says, a purely materialistic civilization, or shall we have a spiritual world trend? Well, that's being fought out right now. as during this century and very much now before the great conclave of 2025, the last-ditch fight of materialism is taking place. And we can only hope that as a race we are wise enough to inaugurate a spiritual world trend and not a materialistic one. And of course, we have to have leaders that know the difference and are not utter materialists. Number 7, what must be done to prevent the moneyed interests from again mobilizing for the exploitation of the world? Well, they have mobilized. There's no doubt about it, and the statement that the rich are getting richer, we always hear about, the top 1% who own most of everything. The rich are getting richer and the poor are poorer. It's a huge gulf. When you see these people scrounging on the garbage piles, huge garbage piles, just for something to eat, it's heartbreaking. And it's not fair. If we saw our children in such a state, or our brothers and our sisters, we wouldn't countenance that. And we cannot. Now, I was just reading that Venezuela has suffered tremendously since the fall of oil prices, and they had pretty much one commodity that was bringing a lot of revenue into the country. And when there was a steep fall in the value of oil and so forth, the country went into a tailspin where it has been for years now. I know there are other causes, as I've been reminded, including, the exploitation by other countries, maybe even including the United States and others. But let's just say their water supply is contaminated. They have to wash and drink the same water. There's no chlorine plant. Can't purify the water. The people are suffering from bacterial infections and diarrhea, and the health level is going down. And just to get any water at all is taking hours a day. It shows you what can happen unless the seventh ray enters and really plans very carefully. And we will have, we're entering this this age of planning, this age of foreseeing the material requirements, and the first degree initiates on the seventh ray are coming in to manage the distribution of those things by which the human being lives, those things which are needed. We can look forward in the Aquarian age to this, but meanwhile, there are some just terrible things happening and totally compromising the quality of life of millions of people. I mean, here in our modern Western countries, maybe we don't imagine that such things can happen, but let us be warned. The Master DK said, let's say, for instance, in the United States, that much suffering lies ahead. And the eighth question, see, these questions are really, really germane. They're foundational. We really have to know what they are. They really haven't changed in the time. What really lies at the very heart of the modern materialistic difficulty? I guess we could go back to Atlantean days when the ability to contact the subtle planes was lost, and the fear of death entered, we could do that. We could simply say materialism is misperception, superficial perception. It's a lack of sensitivity. It's inability to contact the higher aspects of one's own nature, and therefore to see how much more of life there is than what the 5 lower senses can reveal. You know, there are many causes here, and we should think about it, and to what extent materialism still compromises our own approach to living. This last question, he says, can be answered in the well-known words, the love of money is the root of all evil. And this throws us back on the fundamental weakness of humanity, he says, the fundamental weakness, the quality of desire. We live in a desire solar system. The astral body of the solar logos is very strong, and this is true of our own planetary logos. And of desire, money is the result and the symbol. Man is intent on fulfilling his desires, and first his lower desires, I guess, and he's found a way to do it through the exchange of this symbol and the quantities which which men accrue to themselves. From the simple process of barter and exchange, see, we haven't got so much more to read in this particular chapter. From the simple process of barter and exchange, as practiced by the primeval savage, I can't use that word so much anymore, you know. In the Romantic period, it was used to indicate one who was, sauvage, who was wise, for being close to nature. But it has evolved into a pejorative, a negative word. From the simple process of barter and exchange to the intricate and formidable financial and economic structure of the modern world, desire is the underlying cause. Well, I think it would only take a little bit for us to understand how much desire drives our life. And then once our values are settled, it's the will that drives. So of this desire, it demands the satisfaction of the sensed need. The desire for goods and possessions. As a matter of fact, it's so interesting with the word goods, isn't it? It's that which is tangible and which you have in store and which is well stocked is considered good. The tangible possessions are considered good. You look at some of those Victorian households, and they were really cluttered. It's as if you could have a race to see who could stuff their house with more stuff. But that has changed with design and with the style. And 100 years later, I guess I can speak for Scandinavia. The very sparse and uncluttered space is considered advantageous. The desire for material comfort, for the acquisition and the accumulation of things, the desire for power and the supremacy which money alone can give. We see, the whole world is grasping for these things, and on the cross, the mutable cross, or rather the fixed cross, we learn that only the empty nail-marked hands are entitled to the riches of the universe, because they will not be used wrongly. This desire controls and dominates human thinking. It is the keynote of our modern civilization. It is also, mine's one of the Hydra here a bit, it is also the octopus which is slowly strangling human life, enterprise, and decency. It is the millstone around the neck of humanity. That's why the Buddha, sort of foreseeing all this, understanding the role of desire in human living, put such a tremendous emphasis upon overcoming desire, at least the negative desire. Master Moria emphasized in his books that we don't really overcome desire, but we certainly elevate it to a cosmic principle. D.K. goes on to say, to own, to possess, to compete with other men for supremacy has been the keynote of the average human being. It's an egotistical attitude, basically, what it is. And that is mistaken identity. So, what does it say here? To own, to possess, it's the keynote. Householder against householder, business against business, organization against organization, party against party, nation against nation, labor against capital, so that today it is recognized that the problem of peace and happiness is primarily related to the world's resources and to the ownership of these resources. Just watch what happens in relation to water during the age of the water bearer, and especially during the first 720 years of it. Well, I think, that's enough of that for right this moment. What I'm going to do, if I can, it's a little bit different format, so it's not so easy to, let's just say that ought to do it. And I will, Tuija and I alternate on these things, or, have some different approaches, and I tend to, read here and make commentary. It's my nature. When it's my turn, or when I have to substitute, and we're almost done with this chapter, really. So this is the 20th of October, and it's 2019. So that'll be as far as we'll go on that. And but you get the idea. Our financial situation, coming largely on the third ray, is a real mess. And these words of DK are meant to orient us. So, with those things in mind, and sensing the great need and the great abuse of the money in the world, which in a way is prana, in a way is the energy to create and get the right things done. Maybe, we can deepen our meditation along these lines. So let's think together. We'll come together and in a little group here. and try to realize a few things. And maybe the first thing to realize, gradually week after week, it's going to sink in. To those who give shall be given. It's the law, It's the law. So that they can give again. To those who give shall be given, so that they can give again. To those who give all is given. So we come into our soul alignment, where there's a greater wisdom, and as soul light fills the light of the mind, and we answer according to our best light these questions. If money is one of the most important things needed for spiritual work, what is the factor which is at present deflecting it away from the work of the hierarchy? We'll ponder for a few moments. And in answering this question to ourselves, we must remember that the wrong use of money is all tied up with low desire. And then the next question: what is my present attitude towards money? Do I regard it as a great and possible spiritual asset, or do I think of it in material terms? Number 3, what is my personal responsibility in regard to the money which passes through my hands? Am I handling it as a disciple of the Masters should handle it? I think the factor of choice under Libra and Saturn comes in very much here. we always have to choose what money shall be spent upon, and it depends so much on our values. And these values are settled tendencies of desire. So, what really do we desire? The symbolism of what holds humanity down into its personality, material nature, is the Hydra. 9 heads and maybe many more, the old legend. Cut off one head, 2 more appear. And money is one of the big ones. It's as if the whole world is the slave of the concept of money, and as if we monetize everything. And certainly there's so much of life which cannot be justly monetized at all. So does this head, this money head, have any power over us? Let's think for a few moments. It's a great glamour. But it can be overcome. If we learn how to kneel, that's humility, an adjusted sense of proportion, and lift all of these faults into the area where they can be seen for what they are, that is, into the realm of the intuition and its straight knowledge. And then we'll see how we have been overcome by these things, even for millions of years. So bear in mind, the Hydra is always ready to assert itself before it is defeated. Now ponder on the redemption of humanity through the right use of money. Every ashram has certain projects which would elevate humanity and the planet, and the money should go in those directions. But presently, largely material purposes determine how money is spent, and the satisfaction, where the individual is concerned, of purely personal desires. Let's look at that interiorly, how it is spent often today. It's just the selfish use of money based on mistaken identity, thinking one is the personality when one is far more the soul. And, it's superficial, and the consciousness is fixated on that which passes away, not on that which abides. So now instead, let us visualize money as a great stream of flowing golden substance, passing out of the control of the forces of materialism and into the control of the forces of light. It's really money for the hierarchy and its purposes, for the Christ and his purposes through the hierarchy and through humanity. It would change everything. And eventually it will. And there shall be then more satisfaction of the higher desires than ever before, and adequate meeting of the lesser necessities. So let's work in that direction. And we'll use this invocative prayer with focused mental concentration and with a heartfelt desire to meet spiritual demands. O Thou, in whom we live and move and have our being, the power that can make all things new, turn to spiritual purposes the money in the world. Touch the hearts of men everywhere, so that they may give to the work of the hierarchy that which has hitherto been given to material satisfaction. The new group of world servers needs money in large quantities. I ask that the needed vast sums may be made available. May this potent energy of thine be in the hands of the forces of light. So we're really invoking the planetary logos here. And we're seeking to see money used for the manifestation, especially on the lower planes of the divine plan of that logos. And then we visualize the work to be done by those groups which claim our present allegiance, any group that we may know of that is attempting to carry out the hierarchical plan. So this has to do with what you've noticed in the world about those groups that are working forward towards the good. And through the creative imagination and by an act of the will, we see untold and unlimited sums of money pouring into the hands of those who seek to do the Master's work. And basically this can boil down to money for the good, the beautiful, and the true. And then we say aloud with conviction and emphasis, tuning in on the Christ, He for whom the whole world waits has said that whatsoever shall be asked in His name, and with faith in the response, will see it accomplished. And we remember at the same time that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. In fact, more esoterically, he tells us light is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Now we're going to ask for the needed money for whatever project, activity, group that we have identified that we would like to see supported, because it helps with the manifestation of the divine plan. And so internally you will determine, as you say to yourself or out loud, I ask the needed money for, and then you'll name the group or activity or whatever it may be. and I can demand it because, and here is the last verse or stanza from the third great invocation, and I can demand it because from the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. So in your creative imagination, you prepare to give your offering to the Christ, to the Lord Maitreya, who will come, reappear, when there is the necessary sharing between nations and groups and people, when there is the necessary measure of peace, and when the political and church organizations have begun to clean house. And this indeed, the last one, is at least happening. So let's get vitally involved in this, using our discrimination, using our sense of choice, about how we spend the money, and let it be more and more for the manifestation of the divine plan. And then we say together, we have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya, be with us. So we are definitely the servants of the Christ, servants of his hierarchy, servants of the divine plan, and through our judicious living, the plan comes ever closer to the outer plane and ever more into manifestation. We close then with a careful consideration of our own responsibility to that plan. We plan our financial cooperation with the hierarchy and our cooperation in terms of time. Both are ruled by Saturn here. And we are practical and realistic, knowing that if we do not give, we may not ask, for we have no right to evoke that which we do not share. We attempt to feel true love pouring through us, and to express it to all whom we can contact is the great selfless agent in world affairs, the Tibetan tells us. So that means we lift everyone we contact, revealing, understanding, and we keep a careful record of how we dispense this money, how we distribute it, whatever the positive group may be that is the recipient of our resources. And we do this regularly. There's a great mystery and rhythm, and it really is effective. Now, we're going to sound the Om 3 times, precipitating love into the worlds of the threefold personality. And we also thank you for any donation that comes in the direction of this esoteric work. We know how powerful it can be when rightly done, and rhythmically done, and persistently done, and people like us, whatever we're doing on the outer plane, we do have to work esoterically. And the work comes free of charge, but of course there is a cost to it. So we thank you for your support. And we will close with that ancient prayer, the Gayatri, so old, you know. O thou who givest sustenance to the universe, from whom all things proceed, to whom all things return, unveil to us the face of the true spiritual sun, hidden by a disk of golden light, so that we may know the truth and do our whole duty as we journey to thy sacred feet.
true Spirit to us all, hidden by a disk of golden light, that we may know the truth and do
So do join us, please, next week, Triangles Wednesday on the morning schedule, Science of Triangles in the evening, and we will continue and we will persist with these meditative offerings. The new group of world servers festival week is coming up. There are many ways to celebrate it, and if you'd like to celebrate it with us here through meditation and study and ritual here in the Temple of Silence in Finland, please let us know. You can write to me infinitize8@gmail.com or to Tuija, Tuija_S_Robbins@gmail.com. Love and many blessings from both of us and from the whole team.